this is Lady Boule, and I hope you're having a marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. Los Angeles, California is in the spotlight today. It's a dreamland for many, a fantasy land for those seeking fame and fortune. But for African Americans, especially those living in the South from years gone by, Los Angeles was a place they went to in hopes of making a better life for themselves. So Los Angeles is an interesting place to study Black American descendants of slavery, because like many, some went seeking fame and fortune in Hollywood, but others went just looking for a chance to make a better life for themselves. Some of the richest and some of the poorest Black people live in Los Angeles. They have a sizable demographic of wealthy entertainers, business people, and athletes. But Los Angeles has a disproportionate number of homeless Black people. 40% of the homeless living in Los Angeles are African American. Now, some of this can be deceiving. If you're a single mother, for instance, and you live with your parents or grandparents, your children will be counted as homeless at school. So you are technically considered homeless. So there are some tricky things that they do with numbers when they're counting demographics. Even so, there is a disproportionate number of African Americans living on the streets in Los Angeles. The whole Black Los Angeles world is fascinating, but for this segment, I want to focus on Black businesses because that's where a lot of the comments are coming from. Black businessmen in Los Angeles, or Black people who are aware of what's happening to small Black business people in Los Angeles. So I'm asking the question, what's going on with Black people in Los Angeles? Black people were in Los Angeles building businesses in 1848 when California still belonged to Mexico. From 1890 to 1910, an influx of Black people from the South began moving into Los Angeles. By 1920, 36% of those Black people were homeowners. They were building businesses and thriving in Los Angeles in the 1920s. And they have always lived among the Mexicans or around the Mexican and Asian people because there has always been more Mexican and Asians in California, including Los Angeles, than Black people. But Black people were thriving in Los Angeles, building businesses and building careers and communities and becoming a cultural center in Los Angeles. In the 1940s, after World War II, there was another influx of immigrants from the South into Los Angeles. So it increased the Black population by quite a bit, but there were lots of jobs. So they were able to buy homes and build communities for themselves. But these were small spaces with large groups of people, and that gave rise to the gangs. Where Black people lived in Los Angeles became a hotbed of street gangs. Now, I think it's safe to say that the infighting that goes on among Black people in Los Angeles weakens the infrastructure of anything that Black people are trying to do relative to business. So now, people who live in Los Angeles, community activists, social commentators, even Black men, particularly these Black men on YouTube, are talking about Los Angeles being a wasteland for Black people because of this war that goes on between the Mexicans and the African Americans. One of them even said that Black people need to pick up and leave, but there are some reasons why Black people are having these problems. One of the things that we're very good at in the African American community is ascribing blame. We always know who's to blame. What we're not so good at is examining causes. Now, the blame for African American businesses being disrupted or pushed out in the Los Angeles community is immigration and Mexicans. I will point out again that Mexicans have always been in California. California used to belong to Mexico. And those Mexicans didn't move to California, they were already there. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't more coming, but they've always been there. And the black businesses have always been there. And they've always coexisted. Now, all of a sudden, black people can't work with Mexicans. Mexicans are a problem. And I think we should examine some of this stuff. Now, I'm asking the question, where is the unity in Los Angeles among black people? Because when you are already outnumbered, you can't afford to fight your own people and think you're going to win against other people. Now, let me speak a truth based on what is being reported over and over again, especially by black women who live in Los Angeles. Black men in Los Angeles are very attracted to those Mexican women. Now, you are having all this problem with Mexican men, but you're choosing Mexican women in many cases as your mate. Now, my thing is, if you are so attracted to Mexican women, Mexican men can't be that bad, because Mexican women come from Mexican men. So why don't you network with them? And I know that's not all black men, but what black women who live in Los Angeles say is that they can hardly get a date with the black men. I know that this is not everybody, but it's enough people doing these things for it to be a problem. These women are saying that they have parties out there where they won't even invite a black woman. A black woman is not even welcome in those parties. And you know that we've seen this on social media. Black women talking about black men, mostly entertainers, but I'm pretty sure it's in the other areas too, where they don't even want black women, if they're dark skinned, really actual black women, to be even in their party, in the section that they're partying. So I don't understand how you're going to build a community of unity with men like that. Now, these things might be overlooked by black people, but I guarantee you any other group of people will see two problems already with what black people are doing. Number one, you got street gangs. You got black men killing each other over nonsense. And number two, you got black men who feel no loyalty to their race or to the women in their race, don't even identify with them in some cases. So you have a group of men who have no respect for the lives of the men in their race or loyalty towards the women in their race. Anybody can come in and take over a group of people like that. You don't even have to fight that hard. Now, speaking of men having no respect for the lives of the men in their race, there's something that I'm aware of that was going on in Los Angeles back in the 80s and 90s, and it may have gone back further than that. In the small town in Alabama that I grew up in, there were no real job opportunities. So the young people would graduate from high school and leave town. Some would go to California, some would go to New York, some would go to Chicago, Detroit, wherever they thought they could find work. So most of them married people that they met in those places and started their families. Well, the ones that went out to California, to Los Angeles, started sending their sons back to this town in Alabama when those boys became teenagers. One of their sons got killed out there, street gang. One of them was knocked in the head and knocked his senses out. I don't think he ever recovered. I don't think he ever got his senses back. But several of them sent them to Alabama for their parents or the children's grandparents to raise, because Los Angeles was a very dangerous place for black teenage boys. Those young boys would not run out of Los Angeles because of the Los Angeles Police Department, because of white people or Mexicans. Those young boys had to leave Los Angeles because of other black men, young black people, killing each other, going and coming. And they couldn't even claim poverty or single motherhood. These children lived in subdivisions where their parents owned their homes. But this was just the climate that was fostered in Los Angeles. I think we can agree that the greatest achievements that we have made in America as a race were done under Jim Crow and segregation, when we knew we had to stick together. when we knew what the real deal was, when we knew that the power was in unification. Other groups of people know that. White people certainly know it. I have a relative that's married to a Mexican, and she lives in California with him, and she says they stick together, and it's understood that Asians stick together. But African Americans, especially those that achieve individual success, take on the attitude many times that I don't need you. You didn't help me. I did this all by myself. So leave me alone and let me live my life because I'm not a role model for you. So that is detrimental to a group of people when you have people who have influence, who have maybe some degree of power, who think like that. I'm not a part of the group anymore. I'm over here with these other people now. So maybe now with so much success, and black people in Los Angeles have been very successful, maybe they've outgrown each other, and maybe they've outgrown those neighborhoods that their businesses are in. Maybe it's time for them to step up and upgrade. Because one thing that we cannot control in America is immigration. And the only chance that anybody out there in Los Angeles is going to succeed because of all of those different ethnicities, the only way that anybody out there is going to succeed is they stick together with their people. And that goes for African Americans. But African Americans really have this thing about once I become successful, I don't have to stick with that group. I can move into these other groups. Now, those other groups don't really have a place for you. And they haven't invited you in. That's something that you want to do. And then when you go in and things go wrong, we start screaming racism. But those other people don't scream racism. What the Asians say is we downplay the racial issues. They have racial problems too. Now, they've been talking about them lately. But folks have been pounding on those Asians for a long time. They just now started to holler. But their business model is not to complain, not to point out the racism or criticize the system. That has been their business model. But they stick together. They pool their money together, and they stand up for each other. And that's the key to a race of people being successful. Now, African Americans probably will always be successful individually. But as a race, we are not going to be successful if we don't stick together. It doesn't matter where we live, because there's competition all around. And that is a problem that I see in Los Angeles, that black people like being individualistic when they become successful, but they prey on the group when they don't have anything. And this is really just a real problem with black Americans. Finally, the black demographics in Los Angeles is shifting. Many of them have moved to suburbs around the city, and many of them have moved out of the state, really. Many have moved back to the South. And one thing about it, when they come to the South, when they have been a homeowner in Los Angeles and they come to the South, they can buy a really nice house, pay cash for it, and have money left over. So Los Angeles has been very good to black people. Now, the new generation of black people in Los Angeles are going to have to find their way just like the old heads did. They're going to have to figure out what the best business model is for them, understanding that other races of people are not going to keep you propped up. They're not going to support you. They're going to support their own. And if you want to be successful, you have to find a way to connect with your own people, or else you'll just be another person complaining about somebody else taking over your business. Because really, when you don't stick together with your own people, it's easy for anybody to take over your business. Okay, y'all, thank you for listening. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.